Hey everyone. So we're live. We're waiting on James Kelley. I don't know where he's at right now. Hopefully he'll be joining us soon, but Spanny's sick, so it's me and Amber for now, and hopefully James Kelley and Wicked will be on soon. So how's it going, Amber?
I mean, it's good. I mean, I'm at a Renaissance fair, so
Well, that's cool.
it's pretty unique.
Oh yeah. They got
How's your
swords.
stuff been all week?
Oh, it's just dealing with everything going on and dealing with other stuff, but other than that, it's been okay.
How have the boys been?
Good, good.
Oh. So, what is your thoughts on all of this kinship care? We had Kenneth with us last week. I mean, is it just me, or is this kind of like a problem where these federal laws that they push down are not getting to the states?
I don't think that it's not that they're getting to the states. We all know that the state doesn't comply with their own policies and procedures. So why would they follow federal law, right? I believe kinship care is better than foster care because at least the children get to stay with the family. Sometimes
I think,
that's not ideal.
but I think my biggest issue is when these families come forth and they say, well, there's federal kinship, these states kind of just shake their head and smug it off. So, like, what would you tell these families? Like, how would you enact kinship care? Like, if you were in that situation, how would you literally say, I want kinship care?
Well, what I tell people is go look up the Family First Act, right? Print it off, take it to court. Go to, you don't even need to go to it. If you contact me, I'll send you the whole Biden administration on kinship because they don't make the money. That is the problem. They want the money. And until we get rid of the money or start giving it to kinship, they don't want to comply with it. That's what I tell people. Look it up.
I think the most frustrating part is the parents that actually do the kinship care and then they get like pushed back. Like the family courts do not want to acknowledge that kinship care even exists.
Huh. Well, that goes to we need to re-educate these judges and lawyers. Okay? Lawyers are supposed to know the law, but we know they don't. Judges aren't supposed to practice law, but they're supposed to stay up to date with local laws, state laws, and federal laws. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution, which is superior law of the land, which means they need to follow federal laws, state laws. They need to follow all of them.
So what advice would you have for parents that are actually like following the federal laws and they go into their local jurisdiction and they file like, let's say, a motion to intervene for kinship care and it's denied? What would the next move be?
I wouldn't even play in family court anymore. I would just take it straight to a federal court because it would be obvious to me that the lower courts aren't following federal law. Federal law trumps state law. The United States Constitution trumps all the laws. That's what I would do.
I think the biggest issue is when people enter federal court, they typically get told if they don't pay the $400 fee, that their stuff just gets intermittently dismissed. If that makes sense, like I feel like there's been a blockage in the federal court cases, like being docketed correctly or being put in.
Amber, find another spot. Amber. Amber. Amber.
Like
Amber. Amber.
Oh.
Amber. Amber.
Are you there?
Find a spot. Oh no. Well, we lost her. There are forms you can ask for to release the fees for you. If you go to uscourts.gov, look up forms, and you can find in the column where you can have your fees waived if you go to federal court. It is expensive to file in federal court, but you can also ask for those to be waived. So I'll give it a few more minutes. And if James Kelley doesn't come on and Amber can't get back on and Jam doesn't come, I guess we'll just end the show because nobody's on but me. So I'll give it a few more minutes. Let's see if Amber can get back on. I just resent her the link. Here she comes.
Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Sorry.
Find a different spot because you're
I think it's
breaking
every
up.
I think it's all right. I think it's every vendor and their mom trying to get on Wi-Fi out here.
Yeah, it probably is. So I just told people they can go to uscourts.gov to get they can download the petition to file to get their fees waived.
But every time that the fees are waived, though, you seem to like dismiss the cases.
Well, I don't know. I would have to look into that. But I know here in Virginia, the higher courts want court cases. And in case people didn't know, Virginia is called the Rocket Docket. And here comes James Kelley.
Hello, how are you?
Hi,
Good, how are
we're
you,
live,
sir?
Mr. Kelley. So say hi.
Hello.
So here you got some interesting information you want to share. So I'm gonna give the floor to you, and I'm gonna mute my mic.
Well, recently we've had the district attorney Ray Tierney attempt to find out who in CPS is responsible for allowing the death of Thomas Valva, and to see if there were criminal charges that ought to be applied. Now, most of the general public thinks, oh, the government pretty much works, and that there is a system of checks and balances in place, and I don't need to know the details. And here's the reality. There is no due process. And if the district attorney cannot get the actual evidence by subpoena, and the grand jury can't get the evidence by subpoena, which is exactly what he had laid out in a press conference at the beginning of the month, then there can be no due process. You have a situation where CPS is given the tyrannical authority to seal their own records, even from the district attorney and even from the grand jury, under the auspices that, well, gee, an unfounded report protects innocent people from being unfairly stigmatized. Well, the reality is there were 10, other than Justina, the mother, there were 10 reports by mandated reporters that were found unfounded, labeled unfounded. There was the 11th one that was labeled founded. They really didn't have a choice in the matter because the boy had been dead a few days. And yes, isn't that shocking to the public conscience? So what they have is the ability to migrate the unfounded underneath the founded. They refused to do that. They refused to unseal them. They refused to submit to the district attorney's subpoena. They refused to they refused to submit to the grand jury subpoena. Apparently, it went to court. And with the statutes in place, the judge said, yeah, this is fine. So the public is denied the ability to, hello, the public is denied the ability to prosecute privately. And that falls on the district attorney to prosecute, or the attorney general. But the public can't operate as their own prosecutor. But for one instance, which is rare and has only been done once. So you've got the situation where even that is being frustrated. So Thomas Valba, the little boy, he had his rights stripped from him, including his right to due process. He didn't get justice in death, and he certainly isn't getting it. He didn't get it in life, and he's certainly not getting it in death. So we've got a situation where the three branches of government have worked together to frustrate this process. Now, if you subscribe to my line of thinking, there are two sets of checks and balances. There's the checks and balances across the three branches of government as the founders laid out in the Constitution. But there's also a second set in the First Amendment. And what you have are three different checks, one balance, and one example. The three checks are the right to peaceably assemble. That's the right to witness what our public officials are doing in whatever public capacity that they're doing them. The second is the freedom of speech, the freedom for the grantors, and I see the Constitution as a revocable trust document. So we, the people, are the grantors, and it allows us the ability to speak to each other as grantors about the conduct or misconduct of public officials. And then, of course, we have freedom of the press, where we have the right to preserve and share among large quantities of grantors evidence of what these officials are actually doing. Now comes the right to petition our government for the redress of grievances. And pretty much nobody knows just what that is or how to do that. And they think, oh, we go to court. And court's the only branch that we can do that in. Well, the reality is we can do that in the legislature as well. And this was done successfully, again, in New York, 1657. The Flushing Remonstrance. A remonstrance is a formal complaint, and it's something that has fallen out of the vernacular. It's something that the folks up in the legislature have forgotten about, and it is a formal complaint by the people upon their representatives seeking to correct a grievance. In the case of the Flushing Remonstrance of 1657, it gave us the fifth element of the First Amendment, which is freedom of religion. And that's the example of the process working. So I took from that and I drafted a remonstrance. It's a single, let's see if I can line it up here, right? It's a single paper, a single page. I kept it nice and short, like the Flushing Remonstrance. And I put it out publicly. I did this last week, actually. And it looks for two things. It looks to issue a binding resolution upon the agency and its officials, collectively known as Child Protective Services, to migrate all unfounded investigations and reports regarding Thomas Valba in their entirety, to unseal them and to provide a full and complete copy of them in their entirety to the District Attorney of Suffolk County, New York, and any grand jury that might be convened as a result. It's pretty straightforward stuff. The second is to enact a statute that balances the accountability of those employed within Child Protective Services and the rights to privacy of those who have unfounded reports within Child Protective Services. So right now, as it stands, Child Protective Services can label something unfounded to cover their own butt, and they've essentially granted themselves absolute immunity under the system that we have now. This is something that could pierce it, but the problem is we, the people, we've become apathetic. There have been a couple of people that have moved forward with this, but not many. If there's a public outcry on this, well, then it will change things. But as of right now, I know of no public outcry like there was when he died years ago. I believe it's been 3 years now, over 3 years. So that, I believe, falls in line with what you've been discussing with CPS. And correct me if I'm wrong here. Does it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because first of all, it's horrible that a child died. Okay, that literally breaks my heart. The other part to that is you're right, there is no accountability. And that's my biggest thing for me, right? You did this is to the parent, right? You did this, whether it's true or not. You're going to sign a safety plan. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. But then where's the accountability for them when their threats, coercion, just traumatizing families? Where's the accountability? And you know what's even more appalling to me is that they won't even release the records to the district attorney.
I think my biggest thing is jumping in is, as an advocate, especially in the military, what I find the most daunting to me is 9 out of 10 cases that were previously unfounded ended up being founded later on. And so, my biggest issue out of this is if there was, without a shadow of a doubt, a founded case, could you have preemptively stopped the kid from no longer being here if you actually followed the policies and procedures? This is the world we live in today. And my biggest thing is all of this, excuse my language, shit is preventable if we take the time to actually look into these cases. 9 out of 10 parents that come and say that their kids were sexually assaulted or something happened to them, they don't just magically concoct that. They've witnessed it firsthand. And so it's what can we do better to avoid kids being unalived in this aspect? This is sad across the board. I mean, I'm a mom of 5, technically 6, and I'm sitting here wondering how unfounded cases across the board were unfounded for 2 years and then they were founded later. It's what can we do better as we the people? Because a remonstrance is amazing, but what do you do for the military when the aspect is you can go through the Navy criminal courts and file a remonstrance and be at the top of the line for a Supreme Court? What can we the people do to actually change this system tenfold? And that's kind of where I'm at, is I'm tired of seeing families be in that oh, well, it's unfounded. Well, it's only unfounded because you didn't pass the police reports off to the proper jurisdiction, and that's kind of Amber being outspoken over here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I can jump in there, I got one. I just got done talking to a parent, and I apologize to everybody for being late. I had some other pressing business. But I just got done talking to a parent, another advocate in South Carolina, where the family court judge is sitting on the bench filing her dog's nails while a proceeding is going on.
Did you say she's filing her DOG's nails?
DOGNAILS, filing her dog's nails and consoling this dog while she is on the bench.
That's a problem.
Now, I just got done telling me this. Look at the girl from South Carolina, Rose, they put her, CPS put her with the family because the mother was a reality TV star and beat the child to death. They weren't even certified. But
James,
yeah,
I have a question for you. So you
Yeah.
did a remonstrance. And it's tailored to the child that is no longer here. What is your opinion on passing a legislative bill that makes and upholds, them following the family first policies, them following the procedures, to maybe avoid another kid being in that situation? Like, you look at Peaky's law, you look at Caden's law. Like, why did these families have to go to the extent of basically continually loudly screaming out for help, and then they never got assistance until their kid is no longer here? Like, what is your advice to parents that are stuck in that predicament?
I wish I had something useful to give them. I think one of the things to do is to understand why we're in this predicament. And a lot of people don't understand it. Let me point to something that a lot of people don't realize, and then I'm going to go deeper. You've got the situation where there is federal incentive grant money behind CPS. That federal incentive grant money supports them in placing children in foster care, and again supports them in putting them in adoptions for with non-family members. And yes, there's the Family First that was a big change to the Social Security Act, Title E. And I know the grandmother that was down in D.C. that was regularly down there fighting for that, and that's a great thing. But we've got a situation where CPS is funded to take children away, and they certainly have to. They've got this built in to pay for themselves in order to be able to do that. So they'll take children away from families they ought not be taken away from. So why is Thomas Valva different? Why didn't they take this child? Well, let me dig a little deeper. Thomas had autism. He was 8. So that doesn't make him a very adoptable child as compared with a young baby that doesn't have autism. As somebody that needs to hit a quota, where are you going to spend your time? You're not going to spend it with the autistic child, because the autistic child, that's a harder placement. So let's dig just a little bit deeper. There was $800,000 in funds, and I did see the bank account statements personally, that had gone into and come out of Michael Valva's accounts over the course of a year. He was an MTA transit police officer, no special rank, just bottom rung. What on earth would somebody get $800,000 for in and out? Well, the argument was that he was an actor, that it had to do with his acting. Okay, I searched long and hard. There was a film that he was involved with in 2013, which was years and years ago, that made between $18,000 and $19,000. Where's $800,000 coming from? The reality is that the mother, Justina, had been complaining that he had been sexually abusing the children, that they were being trafficked, that there were videos being made of this, and that the evidence was being suppressed. Now that is far more believable. And it's unfortunate, but CPS has been associated with using children in child trafficking situations. So is it any surprise that they want to cover this particular case up, and they want to cover up both the sexual abuse, the the pedophilia that had been documented in the videos, the rich and powerful that were probably part of the funding of this. Yeah, there's no surprise. Now, the commissioner of that particular office or director or whatever she was has since stepped down. But as far as I know, there has been no ability to open up those records. I said I was going to dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to go back to the Civil War. In the Civil War, we had a situation. There was, now we see it as, oh, freeing the slaves. The reality is, it wasn't about freeing the slaves at all. It was an economic war. It was the North not having the ability to compete with the South because the South had slaves. And there were those states in the West that were coming on board. And there was the big argument, do we want them to be slave states or non-slave states? So that facilitated the Civil War. And the country just didn't have the money to fight that war. So what they did was they created greenbacks, paper that were small grants to the government that the people would buy and later resell back to the government. Kind of like T-bills, but smaller denominations. Okay. In 1862, Congress decided, well, let's make these legal tender. So they passed the Legal Tender Act of 1862. In 1869, the Supreme Court opined in the Hepburn case, that you cannot pay a debt with another debt. And that's exactly what they were doing. Late in 1869, one of the justices retired after having been part of that decision. And Ulysses S. Grant not only replaced that justice, but added another one and stacked the courts, specifically to reduce that, to reverse that split decision. And you have the Legal Tender Acts of 1870, where it did flip the decision, and we did start using greenbacks and later dollar bills as legal tender. Now, back when that happened, let's call it about 1872, because that's the year I have an accurate number for, and it's approximately similar. You could take a silver dollar, buy 3 dozen eggs, and get change back. Okay. Today, you can take a silver dollar, buy 3 dozen eggs, and get change back with the value of that silver dollar in US dollars. Of course, right now, you're looking at the silver dollar being worth about 30 of the dollar bills, a little less. And we see the price of silver going up, but it's not the price of silver going up, it's the dollar going down. And that the government, the federal government, can print more of these dollars and the states cannot, causes this imbalance. And it causes the states to deprive rights in the pursuit of federal incentive grant money, which is exactly what we see going on here. So I've taken you back in history for a very long ride back, and hopefully it hasn't been too long in terms of minutes, but it shows a foundation as to why states are depriving rights and why this isn't going to be a simple thing to make go away.
And this is something that Mr. Trump, at the beginning of the pandemic, signed an executive order for a full-scale investigation into this. And that executive order was silenced. Now we have Senator Ossoff and a few others now circling back saying, hey, wait a minute. Because like you said, James, we the people are tired of this. I know I am, for one. Good friend of mine's son has succumbed to the family court. I don't want to mention any names because everybody doesn't know yet, but has succumbed to the family court because And I ask this question to you, Tiffany, all the time. Why am I and countless other families, when it comes to family court, why are we unworthy of the protection of the Constitution of the United States?
Because, like James said, it's all about the money. If you start following the money for these judges, my husband did a search on judges. Every time they continue a case, every time whatever they do with the case, they get money, right? They don't care about the Constitution because they truly believe that they are immune. No one is immune. Like Tanner said, file criminal charges against these people. Hold on, Amber, I'm going to get to you. But that's why. But if you, Larry, you're just like me. If you make them comply, then they don't have a choice. Because I'll tell a judge in a heartbeat, don't make me leave your courtroom and go call a civil rights attorney.
But I got a family right now in South Carolina, everybody knows them, where law enforcement will not take the complaint.
I think my biggest thing is you talk about following the money for the judges. You know what I find intriguing? I find intriguing that if you follow the money to the judges, the attorneys in these cases for CPS and these attorneys in these cases for these quote unquote indigenous, families that they assign and they don't want to remove, all have deposits to these judges that are overhearing these cases. And then you talk RICO, but if you bring that forth, they covered up that it's like, we're just, going for their election campaign. No, you paid that judge to have favor in that court. Let's be real, y'all.
Well, even we can prove the federal incentive dollars. Right there is the violation of due process. Am I not correct, James?
You are correct. The first element, according to Judge Friendly, some kind of hearing, 1975, is an impartial tribunal. And what you have here is with the federal incentive dollars, a violation of that impartiality. And you can see Toomey v. Ohio, 1927, Supreme Court decision on that. But everybody goes along to get along. And nobody's going to turn. And the courts are going to say, well, we're immune. See Stump v. Sparkman, 1978. And when you look at Stump v. Sparkman, 1978, it says C. Bradley v. Fisher, 1871. Now, Bradley v. Fisher, 1871, was decided on December 1st. Certainly, they had it there months and months before that. And something interesting happened in April of 1871 as a result of the Civil War. You had the Ku Klux Klan Act that was Statute 17 Statute 13, that was a precursor to 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 for those civil rights suits. Here's the problem. There were 16 words, the notwithstanding clause, left out that would make the judiciary accountable. So the Supreme Court came in and opined in Bradley v. Fisher and never opined on 17 Statute 13. Ever. That's still being brought before them today from various courts. And they're going to try and find some way as to not hear it. I'm disgusted with the entirety of the government. And as much as the folks here and the folks listening recognize that, yes, there's a deep problem, the reality is that we are a minority in terms of those that understand. And the vast majority of people believe the comfortable delusion that, well, the government's not perfect, but it's working. And, it can't possibly be that bad. You're just disgruntled. These are the kind of things, until it happens to them, until they actually have to know this stuff, it's something where there's two types of people. There's us and there's them. And the government keeps trying to divide us, black and white, male and female. And the reality is that's all smoke and mirrors. There are those that understand this, and then there are those that don't.
Well, you
Uh,
know where I get them at? I get them, and this is where I get them to listen, because I've conducted a little experiment. You bring up DSS, child support, and then when you hit them with that money's coming out of your Social Security money, now all of a sudden you got their attention. Boy, you got their attention.
I tell people to start handing out W-9 forms. Start
Well,
getting
look.
these people's information. Send
Look,
up the federal complaint form and ask whose name do you put on it. Theirs or yours? Whose name do you put on it?
Listen, the IRS just posted that if you sold heroin, fentanyl, or any illegal drugs or stolen property, that you ought to claim that on your taxes.
They did. They
Now,
sure did.
now y'all make that make sense.
I feel like I've adopted the new saying, make it make sense, like Mims, make it make sense, because none of this, excuse my language, shit makes sense to me.
You can't make
I
this
would like
up.
to know, when the Interstate Compact Act and the Social Security Administration Act allowed for a child to be removed from one state to another, because if you actually read it under 18 USC 5033, it states that an attorney general has to be notified. So when you remove one kid, let's say from South Carolina to Texas, the attorney general has to sign off on that. So
Oh, really?
in my knowledge, make it make sense world, I want to know how these kids are being moved from Florida to California by DSS, and the attorney generals in their quote unquote duty under oath are supposed to be involved in address confidentiality. They're supposed to be notified. They're supposed to be pulled in front of federal magistrate. Make it make sense. If there are these policies and procedures that we, the people, have put into place, wouldn't it be more easier to follow them instead of just ignore that they even exist? Because at this point, 90% of the families that find themselves in these situations, and I'm one of them, didn't realize that this stuff ever existed until I had to open a book, or AKA Google, and start digging down the rabbit hole. Make it make sense.
I wish I could. It's depriving rights in pursuit of a diminishing fiat currency with diminishing value, and that's the only way it makes sense. Everybody's turning their heads to go along to get along. And as far as we the people, well, forget about the 13th Amendment, forget about the 14th Amendment, forget about the 5th Amendment. There is no due process. If we can't get due process, there's nothing that cannot be tyrannically removed at the whim of a tyrant. Nothing. And I can give you 3 examples in New York State where there's just no due process. And, people look at me and they're like, nah, can't be. And I loved it when I drove Uber, because I'd have an attorney or a law student get into the car. And by the time they got out 20 minutes later, they were shell-shocked. They needed to sit down and reconsider their lives. Because, think about it this way. You're a defense attorney or something like that. And it's a good thing we have due process, because if we didn't have due process, that would be awful. So it's a good thing that our rights and that sort of thing. And by the way, I see the ring on your finger. You're married, right? Oh, yeah. And you were married in New York State after June 12th, 1967? Yeah. Good. Did you know your marriage was based in fraud? What? All right, tell you what. I will prove to you your marriage is based in fraud. You can't. I said, sure I can.
If you only knew, James Kelley, if you only knew. And Tiffany is like literally giving me the don't even start look, Amber, because my story is so beyond effed up. The kerfuffle of the military and the Mental Health Act, and like how many victims are in my situation right now, I couldn't even begin.
Oh, yeah. Think of it this way. You get to the marriage license, the first legal part of marriage. Well, you have the right to contract, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, and of course, the fundamental right to marry. The state of New York deprives you of all of that under color of the marriage license statutes without due process of law, and sells back to you what you already own in a constructive fraud. And they're looking at me like, I never thought of it that way. Okay, so you can defend somebody else's rights and you can't even defend your own? How good are you? and when you take it to a divorce level, now you've got another situation because the divorce judges are accessories after the fact to the deprivation of those rights and to that constructive fraud. And from the very beginning, they shed their jurisdiction under the doctrine of ex parte Young. They can't do that in their professional capacity. They can only do that in their personal capacity. And they have no subject matter jurisdiction in their personal capacity. So now you're in front of a judge where there's no due process. And it's only a New York State Supreme Court judge that you can get divorced in front of. So the entire New York State Supreme Court is without subject matter jurisdiction. I made that argument before the Second Department in New York State, and they were stunned. The assistant district attorney literally had his hand shaking. They were very happy that there were no recordings of that. I wasn't. So you've got the second systemic deprivation of due process, where you have the child's right to have an equal relationship with both parents that are systematically deprived in favor of assigning one parent custodial and the other parent non-custodial status, so that an order of child support can be written and the state can gain more access to federal incentive grant money. That's under federal grant CFDA 93563, whereas CPS, one of their grants is CFDA 93603. And that would be pursuant to 42 USC section 658A and 42 USC section 673B respectively. So you've got this money flowing in, which does the impartial tribunal and deprives due process there. And then you have all courts in New York State that don't want you to record. And of course, that's my biggest thing is, well, I'm going to record. And I've walked into New York State Supreme Court judges, held up the phone, live streamed it, and told the judge there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And cited enough of the case law and statutes that he got up and he ran off the bench twice. So I set precedent in New York with that. I've recorded a number of times since then. Back in December, I had gotten remanded for 30 days and got kicked out on the third day because the judge literally did not have the jurisdiction to put me in pursuant to New York State Judicial Law Section 758 sub 6 sentence 2. And somebody told him, you shouldn't have put this guy in. He's going to sue you. But, that's where I see as the turning point, because the public doesn't believe that it's as bad as we say it is. They never really think logically. In New York State, child support is paid up until the child is up until their 23rd birthday, unless they're disabled, in which case it's their 26th. Now, here's a question I like to ask, and I like to ask the youngsters who most of their parents are divorced. They've grown up in this culture of, everybody's divorced, everybody pays child support, you're just an unhappy parent, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, good. And they have this sense of entitlement. Okay, great. Let's use that. So Can you explain to me why, upon your 18th birthday, if child support is for the child, do you not get paid directly rather than the custodial parent between your 18th birthday and your 23rd or 26th birthday?
We just had this argument.
Uh-huh.
We argued it in New Jersey. You know that.
Yep.
And we took it all the way to the Supreme Court in New Jersey, and we lost because they wanted us to lose.
Well, the beautiful thing about this argument is if you make the motion in court to actually pay the child upon their 18th birthday and you lose, well, now what does that child think of the court system? That child now has to re-explore absolutely everything. You're fighting this situation as a parent, not on one front, the legal front. You're fighting it psychologically, legally, and financially, all at the same time.
Yeah.
And what this does is they're not going to allow the child to get paid. Blessings versus Freestone, I believe it was 1981 Supreme Court decision says, well, Title IV is not for the child. So children don't want to believe that. Oh, you didn't pay child support. You don't care about me. Really? Okay.
Well, if you look up the United States versus Sage, child support is not even a court order. It is, if the Supreme Court has already said, it is no different than a student loan or a car note. So we got people out here believing that these quote unquote administrative orders are court orders. Look up United States versus Sage. United States Supreme Court has already said they are no different than a student loan or a car note. And when I told the judge that, he rolled his eyes. Yeah, I had the case right there in front of me. He didn't want to look at it.
That would make it a dischargeable debt on bankruptcy.
Look up United States versus Sage.
I will.
SAGE tip.
Sage, SAGE. United
I'll tell
States
you-
versus Sage.
Like the sage.
I'll tell you the other case
This the crap out of
to
our
look
house.
up. And this is the one that Wicked Advocate has made it become my absolute favorite case known to mankind, okay? Look up Shakopeta versus Nicholson, okay? Like, I have made that case my bread and butter. That is my absolute favorite case, where you literally say that a domestic violence victim cannot be charged or looked at for neglect of a minor child that is then said trying to protect a child, and CPS then comes and inserts themselves illegally. That case was actually heard in the Supreme Court of New York. And thank God for Wicked Advocate. That is my ultimate favorite case.
I've been using that case since I went through it in South Carolina. I've been
I
using.
sent that case to you.
Yeah, you did. You said, here, look at this. And I dived in, dissected it. But the case I can't find is that the U.S. Supreme Court said, if you can find a case like yours or similar to yours, then their qualified immunity goes out the window. That's the case I got to find. I found it, and I cannot find it again.
I'll have to go through my emails. But James, I want to tell you that my brother-in-law was on last Sunday. He's a Delaware state senator, and he sent a letter to, who did he send it to, Larry?
Later
The-
and Ozoff.
No. Department of Human and Services or whatever, about the GAP program.
Yes.
They sent him a letter back stating the reasons why they could not do that versus why they could do it. And now between me and my sister, he is now taking a deeper dive into this. And when we're done, I'm sending him this video so he can watch what you said, because it blew his mind what me and Larry were telling him. And then on top of that, I've been sending him information upon information upon. They are not going to give you what you want because they believe they are above the law. And it's their money, and it's not their money. It comes from the government to help families, right? And part of the problem, and I tell people this, the reason they don't like kinship is because there is no money in it.
Correct.
brought this up
I'm
to
going to mention a very important person, a senator that did look into this. Georgia Senator Nancy Schaefer.
Mm.
She's no longer with us
No, she's not.
because they couldn't shut her up. So if they're powerful enough to kill a senator, where does it end?
Well, James, I brought up to you, and you said, I'll never forget, it was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and you said light bulb. 1974, Judge Greenfield broke up the monopoly of Ma Bell. Health and Human Services is a monopoly. And I said this to James, and I said, why can't we bring this before the Supreme Court? Because they control food stamps, child support, child protective services, and adult protective services. And I think it was you, Tiffany, that just told me Connecticut, if you sign a safety plan, they can come in your house anytime they want.
Yep. If you have an open safety plan in the state of Connecticut, you have given up your right when you sign that safety plan, because now the legislative body has passed a law that says once you sign it, you have given up your Fourth Amendment right. They can enter your home at any time without your permission.
How do they, James, how do they do that? And they're not law enforcement. They don't even have that authority.
It's very simple. Without due process, we're all slaves. We don't have rights, we have privileges, if they happen to deem us worthy of them.
Well, that's until they run up on people like us, right? Because I make them understand that I know my rights, and you're going to have to kill me before you take my rights. I'm telling you right now, because that's not going to happen. Say it again. I know.
They've done that.
And I told my brother-in-law, be very careful when you start diving into this. And my sister told him, didn't they kill one of those senators? I said, they sure did.
And they've killed people that aren't senators too. There's a friend of mine, Yahya McClain, that produced the documentary, Casualties of War. And in it, there's a gentleman. I'm trying to remember his name, and I cannot, unfortunately. He was put under house arrest. He wouldn't shut up, and eventually, he was given a heart attack, and that was the end of that. He eventually shut up as a result of that because he wasn't breathing anymore. They'll get you into jail, and there was a situation in jail. He got into a fight. So there are ways to shut people up.
It's funny you say that, because I took my videos, I took my YouTube channel right on down here to my prosecuting attorney, because I've known him for 20 some years. And he watched my video. He said he was going to call the sheriff and tell the sheriff, that this was unacceptable. She asked the right questions and you all just wouldn't leave. But anyway, I said, my dad is a retired police officer, and he has told me that I put a big target right on my back. And I said this to the prosecutor. He said, Tiffany, nothing's going to happen to you. I said, just so you know, I know that I'm a target. So if anything happens to me, you know who came after me.
Yeah.
I put enough information out there so that even though I'm a target, it'll just make a martyr out of me.
I
They
feel the
saw what
same way.
they saw what happened the last time they arrested me. Uh, Last time they arrested me and put me in jail was for a 30-day charge. I had gotten as far towards my habeas corpus because normally I'll send myself a habeas corpus before I go in, but this time I didn't have time to do all of that. So I got as far as getting a number 2 pencil, not sharpened, no paper to write on, but I had acquired a number 2 pencil. That's as far as I had gotten. The hue and cry that went up to the sheriff's office, to several judges' offices, was something that they needed to shut down, and the only way that they could shut down was for some of the upper level judges to come down on the individual judge that had remanded me and said, "You stupid idiot, you're making more of an issue out of this than we want it to be. Let him out." So he signed the release papers, and I'm out. It's a circus. People go into court and think, oh well, I have evidence. Great. Truth, fact, evidence, and law have no place in court. None. And they look at me like, no, you can't be right. And I've even had doctors say this. Now, doctors of psychology, and they are stunned and they're confused and they're coming in. I'm saying, okay, you're dealing with betrayal trauma and cognitive dissonance, because I could go up psychology and come down law, and they're like, yeah, but there's no due process.
There isn't. And I have parents that tell me, well, my lawyer won't submit my paperwork. The first thing I tell them is your lawyer does not work for you. They work for the state, even if they're hired. Second thing I tell them, the only way to really get evidence in is to file it yourself, right? And they're like, but they won't let me bring my witnesses in. And I tell people, start filing federal injunctions on these courtrooms, on CPS workers. Start filing federal injunctions. And Amber, before you came on, was like, but Tiffany, it costs like $400. I tell people, go to uscourts.gov. There is a form on there that you can fill out and submit. And in most cases, they will waive the fees. And Amber's saying, well, they're throwing cases out. Keep filing. You know, the federal courts follow federal laws. The state court follows state court. Well, they're supposed to, right? Because we all know, everybody in this video right now, we all know that they don't follow laws, policies, they don't follow anything. But let one of us, James, you've been to jail for it. You didn't follow their rules, their ordinance, their policies, their procedure, but you were held accountable, right? Well, they tried to hold you accountable. Am I right?
Oh, good luck to that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. We can't have all these different systems, right? Because if one person is held accountable, everybody has to be held accountable. And if nobody's being held accountable, then nobody should be held accountable.
Oh, I agree, but you're looking for fairness. Me, I say, okay, you're going to put me in. You're going to give me a captive population to teach. Great. Wait a second. Let me understand this. You're going to put me in for non-payment of child support for however many thousands of dollars. It's going to cost you $170,000 for 6 months. You're going to take care of my food, my shelter, my medical. You're going to let me practice law in jail and educate the population. Where do I sign up?
Right. It's funny because I saw a post come across that said James Kelley's in jail. I instantly called Wiccan. I said, what happened to James Kelley? He said, what are you talking about? I sent him the post. He called me. He said, yeah, man, he's in jail. I said, oh, Do they not know this man is going to sue the hell out of them? And every day he sits in jail, all he's seeing is ching, 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 ching.
Yep. And I will, continuously just pursue it, and they know it. So they can't intimidate me. They can't say I don't know the law. That they can't incarcerate me. They can't leave me free. They don't know what to do with me. I suppose the next thing is to off me. Okay, fine.
Well, we all know we're targets.
Yeah. So
But you can't live your life like that, right? You can't live your life being afraid. That's the problem. People are afraid to stand up.
I refuse to give in to the fear and all of this, the coercion. It's like you don't have the legitimate authority. Now, what I said before about the federal courts, I had a situation in federal court where I did file in federal, and the particular district judge ended up kicking it right out, and I filed an appeal. I took it up to the Second Circuit Appellate, and I had the privilege of actually personally serving my opposition, and that was a great privilege, just to see the look on her face when she sees what looks like phone books, because the poor woman that answered the door said, "Those are too heavy. Can you bring them in?" So it gets down to one particular point. I had oral arguments and all of that, and friends that are advocates with a lot more legal background than myself said, "It sounds like you won." I said, "Yeah, let's see what it says." There was one case, Ortiz v. Perez, 1988, that was their precedent that they affirmed 13 times. And in my case, they affirmed the district court in opposition of that case and made it a non-precedential opinion. Okay? They just, when they want to, go the other way, they go the other way. And who's going to hold them accountable?
That's the thing. I don't know. I'm sure Larry has the 154 cases that we all use. But what's funny to me is I was doing a live, and I can't remember who was on, but I've been doing this for over 30 years, right? Because I know I'm a pattern person, right? I know patterns. So I already knew how CPS was going to act, how the judges were going to act. And I said verbatim what her judge told her. And she asked me if I was in her courtroom, and I wasn't. But the biggest thing is you're right. And I'm not even looking for quote unquote fairness. What I'm looking for is to start. We're already chipping away. We're already chipping away at it, right? Now we just need the whole domino effect to come across the United States with the judges, the lawyers, the CPS workers, the foster care. We just need the whole domino effect, and we need to get more people to stand up, because you're right. People don't care about it until it happens to them. And then when it happens to them, now they're looking for people like me, you, Larry, Spade. They're looking for all of us. The biggest thing I tell people is if you don't know what your rights are, you will be coerced, intimidated. People tell me all the time, "Oh my God, when CPS showed up, the police came. They told me they were going to take my kids." I said, if they didn't have a warrant or a removal order, they can't take your kids, especially off private property. It's crazy. But I love you, Mr. Kelley James. And I told Larry that the first time I talked to you, I said, "Oh my God, I love him." Didn't I, Larry?
Yes, you did.
So
I should mention that the screensaver on my phone says "get a warrant." And it cites Riley v. California. Just in case they forget when they try to get into my phone.
So if people want to reach out and talk to you, how can they find you?
The Facebook group Cameras in Court Now is probably best. I have been stretched incredibly thin as of late, so I don't know how useful I can actually be, but I will certainly try. Uh, that's pretty much the best way to do it.
Well, I definitely want you to come back on another time. But in the meantime, you look up United States versus Sage.
I'm going to.
I'm telling you, that judge, I swear to God, before he rolled his eyes, I'm going to get a piece of paper. He said, Miss Wise, you're telling me this piece of paper right here is not a court order? I said, I sure am. You need to read the United States versus Sage. And I told him the exact same thing. He did like this. Yeah, because you already know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know that is not a court order. In fact, James, do you know what has to make it an official court order?
You're looking for the stamp or the seal?
The seal, the judge's signature, and the clerk of the court. That is a legitimate court order. And if people start looking at these custody papers and these DSS papers and these child support papers, they're all administrative orders. All of them. Not one of them. Not even my own custody papers way back when has all three.
Yep. I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
All right. We're at an hour 6. I got some kids that are hungry. So I want to thank you for coming on, James. And anytime you want to come on, you just let me or Larry or Spanny know, and we'll bring you back on because I already love you.
Well, thank you very much, Tiffany.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll see you guys soon.
Take
All right.
care.
We're ending the show.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.